The serpent's tooth limped into Blackwater Cove like a wounded beast seeking shelter. Kira stood at the rail, one hand pressed against the fragment hidden beneath her soaked cloak, watching as jagged cliffs rose from the dark water like broken teeth. The storm had finally broken, but the silence that followed was somehow worse, heavy and expectant, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Keep your hood up," Captain Rhen muttered, moving past her toward the wheel. "And that cursed thing quiet. If it starts singing again, I know." Kira's fingers tightened over the fragment. Its heat had subsided to a low throb, but she could still feel its resonance deep in her bones, a constant reminder of how thoroughly her life had unraveled in the span of 3 days. 3 days since she'd touched the sealed door in the shattered tower. 3 days since Theron had revealed her bloodline was the key to something vast and terrible. 3 days since she'd become a fugitive from the only world she'd ever known. The cove itself was barely more than a natural harbour carved between cliffs, the water black as pitch even in the grey morning light. A handful of structures clung to the rocky shore, weathered buildings of driftwood and salvaged stone that looked like they'd been assembled from shipwrecks. Which, Kira realized as they drew closer, they probably had been. "This is madness," Torvin said from somewhere behind her. The sailor's voice carried the exhaustion they all felt. "Blackwater Cove. Of all the harbours in the fractured realm, Captain, you bring us here. Would you prefer the Leviathan?" Wren's tone was sharp enough to cut. "Or perhaps you'd like to sail back to Varek's welcoming embrace?" Torvin fell silent. Kira studied the settlement as the serpent's tooth glided toward what passed for a dock. No lights showed in the windows, no smoke rose from the chimneys. The only movement came from tattered banners strung between buildings, whispering in the wind like the voices of the dead. "Captain," she said quietly, "is anyone actually alive here?" Wren's laugh was bitter. "Depends on your definition." Before Kira could ask what that meant, a figure emerged from the largest structure, a building constructed from the hull of some massive vessel, its curved ribs forming the walls. Even at this distance, Kira could see there was something wrong with the way the figure moved. Too smooth, too fluid, as if it were gliding rather than walking. The fragment burned cold against her chest. "Void, take me," Rhen whispered. "He's still here." The man, if it was a man, stood waiting as they secured the ship to the dock. Up close, Kira could see what had disturbed her from afar. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with features that might have been handsome once. But his skin had the pallor of something long drowned, and his eyes were the colour of storm-tossed seas, pupils blown so wide they nearly swallowed the iris entirely. Worst of all was the way shadows clung to him, not falling naturally, but writhing like living things, occasionally revealing glimpses of something beneath his skin. Patterns of light that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat that should have stopped years ago. Kira had read about such things in the tower's archives. Cautionary tales from before the Sundering, warnings about those who bargained with the void. "Wren's saltborn," the man said, his voice like wind through empty spaces. "I wondered when desperation would drive you back to my shore." "Andros." Rhen descended the gangplank with visible reluctance, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade. "I need provisions, fresh water, repairs, and protection from what hunts you." It wasn't a question. Andros's strange eyes shifted to Kira, and she felt the weight of his gaze like physical pressure. "From what you carry." The fragment pulsed. Kira's hand moved instinctively to cover it, but Andros smiled, a terrible expression on that half-dead face. "No need for pretense, little scribe. I can hear it singing, a fragment of the crown of dawn after 20 years sleeping in the tower's depths." He tilted his head, shadows swirling around him like eager hounds. "The question is, why would Theron Ashvale give such a thing to someone like you?" "He didn't give it to me." Kira found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. "I found it. Or it found me." "Ah." Something like pity flickered across Andros's features. "Then you're either very fortunate or very cursed. Come, the Obsidian Council's hunters will have traced your passage through the storm. We have perhaps an hour before they arrive, and there are things you need to understand." He turned without waiting for agreement, gliding back toward the hull house. After a moment's hesitation, Rhen followed. Kira hurried to catch up, intensely aware of the fragment's weight and the way it seemed to pull her forward, as if recognizing something in this strange, half-dead place. The interior of the hull house was exactly what Kira imagined a shipwreck's belly might look like. Curved walls studded with barnacles and coral, the floor slick with perpetual dampness, and everywhere the smell of salt and decay. But there were also signs of habitation, a hammock strung between ribs, a table fashioned from a ship's door, and shelves carved into the walls holding objects that made Kira's skin crawl. Preserved things, dead things, things that probably should have stayed buried beneath the waves. "I was a salvager once," Andros said, noticing her stare. "Before the sundering, before I made my bargain." He moved to the table, where a map lay spread, not of Valtheria as it was now, but as it had been, whole, united. "I dove the deep places, retrieved what others had lost, until the night I dove too deep and found something that should have remained lost." He pressed his palm against the map, and shadows bled from his fingers, pooling across the parchment. Where they touched, the map changed, the unified kingdom shattering before their eyes, fracturing into the broken realm Kira had always known. "This is what came from that discovery," Andros continued. "The knowledge that enabled the sundering, the ritual that Varek Shadowmere used to break the crown and seize power for himself." Wren's hand tightened on her blade. "You're saying you're responsible?" "I'm saying I was a fool who sold what I found to the highest bidder without understanding what it was." Andros's eyes, those terrible storm sea eyes, fixed on Kira. "But I knew the woman who tried to stop it. Your mother, Kira Stormweaver." The world seemed to tilt. "My mother died of fever when I was 3. She was no one, a fisher's wife from Saltmere." "Your mother was Elena Brightborn, last daughter of the old king's brother." Andros moved around the table, and now Kira could see the patterns beneath his skin more clearly. They were runes, carved in light and shadow, the price of whatever bargain he'd made. She survived the sundering by hiding among the lowborn, protecting you and the secret of your bloodline, until Varek's agents found her. No. But even as Kira said it, memories stirred, fragments she dismissed as a child's confusion. Her mother's careful hands showing her how to hide the sight, lullabies in Old Valthirian that no fisher's wife should have known. The men who came on a winter night, and the morning she woke to find her mother cold and still, with no mark upon her but the faint smell of shadow work lingering in the air. "She didn't die of fever," Kira whispered. "She was murdered." "To eliminate the last threat to Varek's claim." Andros nodded. He thought he'd succeeded, but he didn't know about you, hidden in plain sight, just another scribe among thousands. Until you touched the seal that would only open for crown-bearer blood. The fragment burned against Kira's chest, no longer cold, but scorching hot, as if responding to the truth being spoken aloud. She pulled it free without thinking, and in the dim light of the hull house, it blazed like a captured star, a shard of crystalline metal inscribed with runes that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as she watched. "Void, take us all," Rhen breathed. "It's real. It's actually real." "The sunward shard," Andros said, and for the first time something like hope flickered in his dead man's voice. "The largest fragment of the crown, the keystone to reassembling what was broken." He looked at Kira with those terrible eyes. "You're not just a carrier, girl. You're the heir, the one the crown was waiting for." "I'm a scribe." But the words felt hollow, even as she spoke them. The fragment pulsed in her hands, warm and alive, and through it she could feel something vast stirring. Not the void's hunger she'd sensed during the storm, but something older, brighter, like dawn breaking after an endless night. "You were a scribe," Andros corrected. "Now you're the last hope of a broken realm. If you can find the other fragments and reforge the crown, you could end 20 years of chaos, restore the barriers, unite the fractured kingdom. Or get herself killed in the attempt." Rhen's voice was flat. "Every faction will hunt her, Varek most of all." Yes, Andros didn't try to soften it. The moment you stepped into this destiny, you became the most dangerous person in Valthyria. The Council will send everything they have to stop you. But there are others who will help. The Dawn's remnant, the old loyalists, those who remember what the realm was before greed and ambition shattered it. A sound echoed across the water, distant but unmistakable. Horns. War horns. "They're here," Rhen said, moving toward the door. "Faster than you predicted, Shipbreaker." Andros smiled his terrible smile. "Then we make our own bargain, little heir. I will buy you time to escape, but you must promise me something." "What?" Kira asked, though she already knew the answer wouldn't be simple. "When you reforge the crown, if you reforge the crown, you will use it to end bargains like mine. Free those of us caught between the living and the dead, paying forever for mistakes we can never undo." He pressed something into her hand, a small brass compass, its needle spinning wildly. "This will guide you north, to the ashen wastes where the Forge Master's fragment lies. Find it before Varek does. Assemble your claim piece by piece." "I don't know how." "You'll learn. You have to." Andros moved past her, shadows gathering around him like armor. "Now go. There's a path through the caves behind this house. It leads to the Between, the realm where spirits linger. You can travel it to reach the wastes without the Council tracking you." The Between. Kira had read about it in the oldest archives, the space between life and death, where reality grew thin. That's suicide. No living person can walk those paths. Not alone. Andros's hand closed around hers, and she felt the cold of the grave seep into her bones. But beneath it, impossibly, warmth, the fragment's light responding to something in him. "But you carry a piece of the crown. It will protect you, and I can open the way." The horns sounded again, closer now. Through gaps in the hull walls, Kira could see ships entering the cove, 3 of them, flying the Obsidian Council's banner, black sails against grey sky, like fragments of the void made manifest. "Rhen?" Kira looked at the captain. For a long moment, Rhen said nothing. Then she shook her head. I'm a smuggler, not a hero. But I'm also not fool enough to sail away from the only interesting thing that's happened in 20 years. She drew her blade. I'll help Andros buy you time, but you'd better survive long enough to make this mad quest worth my trouble. Andros was already moving, shadows streaming from him like ink in water. He touched the back wall of the hull house, and the woods simply dissolved, revealing a passage that shouldn't exist, a tunnel that seemed to lead both down into the earth and sideways through space, lined with a faint phosphorescence that hurt to look at directly. Go, he said. The path will take you to the ashen wastes. Find the Forgemaster's tomb beneath the red spire. Claim the second fragment. And Kira? He turned, and in his ruined face she saw the man he must have been before the void claimed him. Your mother would be proud. She gave everything to keep you alive. Don't waste that sacrifice. The horns sounded a third time. Shouts echoed across the cove, the sound of steel being drawn. Kira looked at the fragment in her hand, this piece of ancient power that had already cost so many so much. Then at the impossible passage leading into the between. Then back at Andros and Rhen, who were preparing to face the council's hunters to give her time to escape. She thought of her mother, who she'd barely known, of Theron, who'd kept her secret for 20 years, of all the people across the fractured realm living in the aftermath of the Sundering, waiting for someone to make things right. I'll find the fragments, she said. I'll reforge the crown, and I'll free you from your bargain, Andros. I swear it. Then go be the heir you were born to be. Andros smiled one last time before turning toward the door, darkness gathering around him like a storm. And don't look back. Kira stepped into the passage, the fragment clutched against her chest like a promise. Behind her, she heard the first clash of steel, the first screams. But she didn't look back. The path through the between stretched ahead, glowing with its own sickly light, and somewhere far to the north, another fragment of the crown waited. She had been a scribe, a nobody, a girl who wanted nothing more than to hide her gifts and survive. Now she was Kira Brightborn, last of the royal line, and the fate of a shattered realm rested in her trembling hands. The passage closed behind her with a sound like a door sealing shut forever, and she stepped forward into the realm of the dead, carrying the light of the crown into the darkness.